I am delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, and that is Dennis West. Dennis, come on up from Northern Initiatives. I met Dennis, I don't know when I first arrived here at Northern Michigan University, and he's spent over 33 years in community economic development, and he's worked in a broad range of community-based civic and professional activities. Since 1997, Dennis has served as the president of Northern Initiatives, a private, not-for-profit community development financial institution based here in Marquette, Michigan. Northern Initiatives was founded by Northern Michigan University, and I think with the help of Fred Joyal, and one of my dear mentors, too. Northern Initiatives serves 73 counties in Michigan and Wisconsin. It provides financial knowledge and building services to start up and grow businesses in underserved rural markets like our own. Northern Initiatives helps people to start and grow their businesses. It has made over 1,000 loans to date, totaling over $60 million, with 1/4 of its loans going to women-based businesses, women-owned businesses, and 1/3 goes to startups. Its business knowledge and building services provide technical assistance, training, and consulting to its 225+ loan portfolio. In 2016, it launched a loan customer portal. It initiates offering blended learning opportunities, face-to-face and online learning opportunities to customers that it services around its service area with the help of a Northern Initiatives coach. Dennis serves on over 12 boards. I'm going to let him describe those to you because it's quite an impressive list. He's a coach mentor for the Kellogg Foundation, so not only is he recognized locally as an advocate and a leader for small startups, but he's recognized externally by Kellogg and other entities. He's a native of Indianapolis and an undergraduate from Hanover College, and did graduate work at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee in urban affairs. It's my pleasure. Dennis, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Tawny. I really love this event. And what I love about this event is the fact that we honor people who do some really tremendous things. And most importantly, we get the chance to hear their stories. So I appreciate this opportunity to share a little bit about what we do at Northern Initiatives. And what I'm going to talk about are our origins, what we do, and who we serve, some of our successes, and some thoughts about the future. And I'm going to sprinkle in some lessons of where we find ourselves gaining some insights in our own learning and where we've learned to fail better. So we were begun really in 1985 when Northern Michigan University started to study that the Upper Peninsula had some significant challenges, some of which were that unemployment across the UP at that time was 15% and higher in some areas. And Northern saw that 2/3 of their students were coming from the Upper Peninsula. So they wanted to see how could a university begin to affect change in support of an economy. And what they began to do was research that would support thinking about how to build a more diverse and resilient economy. That we had enjoyed the benefits of extractive industries, but we needed to think about how this economy could be more resilient by thinking about ways to create more wealth and more participation in the economy by more people. So our origins, we had a university who incorporated us in 1992 and did so with Shore Bank, which was a community development bank that was based in Chicago. So it was the first community development bank. So our DNA had two pieces. It was banking and bank-like systems, and it was knowledge building systems. And those themes are what are pervasive about who we are and what makes us very unique. A motto that we would think about is ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail again, fail better. And when we annually do a day in January, which we call Bring Your Broom to Work Day. And it's really just allowing our staff to get set up again, clean up, get rid of old files, do all the things that you really need to do to get set for the year. So this year, in Bring Your Broom to Work Day, I found old studies about the creation of Northern initiatives. And one of those studies said that we were going to be created to help support growing businesses, and we would not do startups. So it's probably pretty fortunate that I saw that some 25 years later, because a third of what we do is startups. And we focus on in trying to support startups, which is about 30% of our businesses, and also manufacturers, which is another 30% of our businesses. So much of the manufacturing lending is subordinated debt. So it's an opportunity for us to work with their bank and try to support a business that's on the verge of growing. So learning to fail better, I just clicked past the slide, but the first 3 loans that we did failed. So right out of the box, if you go to Macmillan, which I try to avoid, I go through Blaney Park now, because you would always see this Tequamanon artesian water sign that is still there. I mean, how in the world it survives the winters and the beatings and everything. But it's there as a reminder, I think, for us that our first 3 loans failed. And a loan that we didn't do is here in Marquette. And some 23 years later, it's still going. So inevitably, our loan officer will prove to be right that some decade that will not be a good loan. But as it stands, we've gone from those early days where we had 100% losses down to now 3% losses. So our focus has tried to always be on thinking, since those early losses, about trying to incorporate someone's character into how we think about an approach. So Archimedes once said, "Give me a place to stand and I'll move the world." Well, that's ridiculous, but that's what we look for in terms of people that we're going to lend to. Somebody who is going to take on the responsibility to make a judgment about a business and be able to move that business further. So as a friend, Bob Friedman, once said, in a world where pet rock became a $3 million industry, who's to say what a bad business idea is? So our philosophy is not to focus on the idea, it's to focus on the entrepreneur, and to always make sure that in thinking about the entrepreneur, that really what we're assessing is character. And character and a belief that they're going to push forward and pull something off, regardless of what it looks like. So if we can believe in them, we can believe in the possibility of what they're trying to do in the marketplace. So lessons. One of the early things that Northern Initiatives did was that we were involved with Sawyer Lumber. And at that time, which was back in 1997, we had total assets of $1.8 million, and $1.2 million was in Sawyer Lumber in a deeply subordinated situation. So this violates all principles of risk management, I must say. And yet, it also exemplifies what character means in terms of how you think about your lending. Dave Holly took something, a unique startup, advanced technology, and brought something to bear for Marquette County, and at that time, a pretty depleted Air Force base that has consistently employed over 100 people. Dave paid everyone back. We survived, and we've been able to take off from there. But it illustrates how important character is when you think about people who want to start and grow a business, and how important it is for us to look at that. So the lessons are, first, don't make a habit of violating your risk management policies. And second, always bet on character. So what we've been able to pull off is that we're now well over 1,000 loans that we've done. 60 million of those loans have been made. They've helped create nearly 4,700 jobs now when we add what's happened so far this year. And of those loans, 730 have been made in the UP, and that totals 42 million of what we've done. 30% of startups, 29% to manufacturers, and they've ranged from $1,000 to 1.8 million. So it's quite a range with an average of about 55,000. We've done $1 million in loans in over 19 counties now. And one of my favorite stories about one of those small loans was a business that was called Resource Recovery Systems. And we affectionately knew that as the roadkill guy. And the roadkill guy had gotten the ability to privatize collection of roadkill in a couple of counties. So your misfortune was our loan payment. Now, why would we do a loan like this? Because it's not something that probably has the ability to grow. We did it because this individual, who was actually quite skilled, he was a welder, was also caring for a disabled brother. And so he needed the flexibility to be able to manage that. So a small loan in this case helped make it possible for someone to be able to care for a brother. So the next lesson is some loans, you just do them. Not because they're going to take a business that's going to go very far or any place in particular. So who do we serve and how do we go about serving them? In America, there are 4 ways to create wealth. You either own a home, you save, you get more education, which is a proxy for wealth, or you start a business. So the charge of thinking about how you build a more diverse and resilient UP economy is entrusted to try to help people to be able to grow wealth through business ownership. So that has been a very important part of our philosophy of what we do. And ideally, that means being able to work with a company from both their startup and through their growth phases. And I think what's really important in today's world, that those businesses now are starting to become the differentiators for our communities. So it's a world that's shifted where now what's valued to a greater and greater degree are things that are local, fresh, natural, and authentic. And those are also the things that differentiate your community from other communities. I used to coach travel soccer, and the first several years that we would host the Dome tournament, when people would come to town from various places, they'd want to know, do you have an Olive Garden? Do you have an Applebee's? Do you have these things? But by the end of my tenure, which was toward 2007, 2008, people would come here and they'd want to know what's unique, what's different, what's illustrative of Marquette. And I think we continue to see that shift. You see that shift in beer. In the late 1800s, Michigan had 151 breweries, and by 2013, after dipping to 3 at one point, it was back up to 151, and it just keeps going. So these kinds of businesses, the unique farm-to-fork restaurants, the breweries, the co-ops, all of these things are the differentiators for your community that give it a vibe. And so what we want to be able to do and continue to think about how we do is not just how do we do transactions. I think it's great that we've done 1,000, but how do we transform those transactions into relationships? And when we're able to do that, we can see businesses have a chance to be able to grow. Now, all of us have thought at one time about owning our own business. It's sort of natural. And about 10% of us actually should try it. And the other 90% of us deserve a pat on the head and an escort to a rubber room or something. So people who actually have the attitude and aptitude to start a business are really rare, and they're very precious in all of our communities. And yet, not everyone who has the attitude and aptitude also has the credit history, the collateral, the cash, but they do have character, and they do have the ability to draw up a business plan and create cash flows. So what we tend to do is we're going to look at everything that a bank does. We're going to look at credit. We're going to look at whether they have collateral. We're going to look at whether they have the cash to do the business. And we're going to also discover that in most cases, most of our customers aren't bank ready, and they aren't bankable. So our position in this world is to try to emphasize a look at character, look at all the same things, and question if somebody has a credit history that has problems, why was that? In some cases, it was a medical bankruptcy. In some cases, it was a divorce. In some cases, a child got injured and it wrecked their credit history for a period. So we want to get inside of what those issues are. If you don't have a home and you're trying to pledge secondary collateral, you may not have it. So we want to understand that that may be the source of why you couldn't meet some standards. So we're always trying to discover the story behind the story so that we can refine our look into character and cash flow, and to be able to do what we can in order to support people to get started in businesses. Now, if we've taken our hypothetical 1,000 and we've reduced it to the fact that there are only 100 who have the attitude and aptitude, then the next cut would be that we would expect only 6 or 7 of that 100 to be responsible for 80% of the jobs and 80% of the innovation. So the task that we try to focus on is twofold. One, can we take 100 and help your community get as many of its 100 into business as possible? And second, because not everybody's got a rich uncle or access to cash and things. So that's one. And then second, can we take the 6 or 7 and turn it into 15 or 20? And so the first part of that is, what is your entrepreneurial ecosystem? What does that look like? And in Marquette, we have a pretty sophisticated one. We have the ability to go to Invent at NMU in the Smart Zone with an idea on a napkin and test the possibility of that working. We have Accelerate UP, which was supported by the Lundin Foundation, to be able to take a look at whether someone just needs someone to talk to sort through their ideas. We have the Small Business Development Centers that help offer a free service for business planning. So we have lots of different pieces that fit into helping us get to the point where somebody can actually take a step forward and decide that they could go into business. In other parts, that entrepreneurial ecosystem in Gogebic County, the entrepreneurial ecosystem is Bob Jackward. And honestly, we've done I think it's the second most dollar volume of loans in Gogebic County. Now, Gogebic County has lost population for 50 years. This does not make sense. But yet you've got someone like Bob Jackwart, who anytime somebody has an idea and they can't find their way into the financial system, there's Bob helping guide them as to how to move forward and keep things going. So in some places, Sheboygan County, it's an angel investor who is the ecosystem. In Gaylord and Grayling, the ecosystem is former bankers from Northwestern Mutual Bank. So you see sophisticated ecosystems, which are great, and you see informal ecosystems, which can also prove to be extremely productive too. And then along with the ecosystem, so ways to get people going in business, the other side is an infrastructure that supports business. And what you would experience in rural areas is three challenges. One, distance from markets. Second, the size of local markets. And third, isolation in relationship sometimes to other entrepreneurs. So when you are able to create an environment where people have access to supports, coaches, mentors, peers, financial services that come from commercial lenders and credit unions, those are all part of the necessity to help support people to be able to grow. And I'm happy that we're having a panel today about broadband, because broadband is the method by which we can create equal footing for our small businesses. So it's one thing to be able to sell when the tourists come or when we're avoiding winter, because we have lots of seasonality. But it's a much better thing if you can sell year-round. And so trying to support people on e-commerce starts with, do we have access and the ability to get to broadband? So our approach, do we compete with banks? No. In fact, about 60 to 70% of our loans start with commercial banks. And that's a great system for us because the customer is meeting the smell test. A bank may find themselves in a position where they simply, because of their concentration limits or because of regulatory issues or because of their underwriting criteria, they don't fit. And so the good thing about us is we're a nonprofit, we're non-depository. So as they make a recommendation to us for a customer and we can take a look at it, the odds are that that business is going to come back to the bank at some point because they're still bringing in their payroll, they're still bringing in deposits, and so the bank gets a chance to maybe see them every Friday, and at some point they say, how's it going? Or Jeremy says, how's it going? And they say, well, it couldn't be better. And Jeremy says, well, show me your tax returns. And suddenly, we don't have that loan anymore. But that's a great system. There's a symbiosis between what we do and what the financial institutions do that help support growth. So our approach is money and know-how. So we're going to provide both access to capital for small businesses that have the chance to grow. But the second side of our work is that we want to get people into a point where they can be successful. And that almost always starts with accounting. So if you can't, we want you to go from checkbook to QuickBooks and someday to help support you to go to cost accounting. So that's the progression that's going to help a business to be able to grow. So the challenge is always, can you help someone to be able to go from working in their business to on their business? And when most people are in the startup mode, they are working in their business full time. And yet, that's when they really need supports to be able to have coaching and be able to have a chance to grow. So, as I said before, naturally we would expect that if you start with 100 small businesses, 6 or 7 are going to be responsible for 80% of the jobs and 80% of the innovation. So I want to talk about some of our successes where we've been able to see small businesses to be able to grow to that point that they join the 6 or 7 or perhaps become 7 and 8 in your community. Dan Torres and the Border Grill was started where the New York Deli is now, and that start was in a building where there had been 2 unsuccessful Mexican restaurants that preceded Dan when he got started. So this was back in 1998. Dan had this idea that if you could bring fresh Mexican food, that would be a differentiator and a competitor. And we've worked with Dan now for 15 years And so we started in a startup loan. I've worked with Dan on accounting, profit mastery, different programs. We've been a subordinated lender, and about 5 years ago, he didn't need us anymore. But we need him now. And the other side is that Dan is, when we're starting to work with restaurants, Dan does consulting for us. So he goes out pre-opening and helps businesses to be able to test inventory, to think about staffing, all those things. So every time a restaurant comes before our loan committee, inevitably someone on loan committee says, well, this is the last one of these we're going to do until the next loan committee, or so it seems. And the people who can pull off a restaurant, I think they're magical, because you got to hit it every day in terms of inventory, pricing, staffing. You have to take into account so many things to be able to be successful each and every single day. So now having Dan come and do some consulting on our behalf to help us with people who are going into that business is huge. And Dan has even prepared something that we're using with other customers, which is how to get prepared for a soft opening and to work through all the issues that you have to be able to do to be able to be successful on your launch. We've had a 20-year relationship with Bob Jackwart and Jackwart Fabric Products, and we started with Bob when he wanted to change an accounting system because he was running into cash issues, and he thought that it was all an issue in his inventory, which it was. But his inventory was that he had a lot of finished goods that wasn't being sold. And at that time, Bob was focused on pet beds. So he was part of the wave of the catalog of Doctors Foster and Smith taking off. And so Doctors Foster and Smith would come back to Bob and say, Bob, can you give us more patterns? Can you give us more designs? Can you give us more sizes? And Bob was producing more patterns, more sizes. But he was also putting them on racks and creating lots of inventory in hopes that you would call. And so we worked with Bob to help support him in creating a just-in-time system. And the just-in-time system helped him to see that he actually had excess room in his business. And that helped to launch Extreme Tool, which was a startup of 6 guys who were coming out of Ironwood Plastics who wanted to start a mold-making business. So you have 2 unexpected things happening in America. You have a cut-and-sew business, which is being successful and growing, and you have a mold-making business, which are 2 things that we were seeding to other parts of the world. Well, long story short, Bob has been able to continue to grow, and of course, we all know that Bob has moved into clothing and the Stormy Cromer lines, as well as the other businesses that Bob has. And Extreme Tool has gone from 60 to about 70 people in Wakefield. So in Gogebic County, you've got over 200 employees who are part of both systems where we've been able to help in startup and growth, and combining the ability to work with them, both with capital and with business know-how. Carl and Paula Nelson and Carl's Cuisine, their business was that they wanted to start a business in Pickford, Michigan. Pickford is very small. And the idea that they wanted to start with was a catering business. And so they were looking at how people like them were not able to provide meals for their families because their kids are in after-school activities and sports and things like that. So in a very small community, they started this catering business. And so we made a small loan to help them get started. And of course, you know, you're looking at the size of the market and other things. And that one seemed a little dubious when it came to loan committee. But Carl's Cuisine has grown from that early catering to a business in Sault Ste. Marie. Their daughter has added a winemaking function. So they sell private label wines, and last year they entered the microbrewery and craft brewery business. So they've gone from basically a home business to about 30 employees and different lines. And if you ever have a chance, they're right across from the Sioux Locks, and food's wonderful. Marquette Food Co-op, we were the primary lender when they moved off of Washington Street over to Baraga, and now we're a subordinated lender. So we're behind other things, but we help filling the gaps to be able to make a business like that grow. And we helped them participate in Profit Mastery, which is a way to learn about advanced metrics and accounting and cash flows and things like that. So, that's another example of putting those two pieces together to support growth. And now I think they're up to about 80 employees. Pictured Rocks Boat Tour, we helped John to be able to move to an e-commerce system and to be able to move to a ticketing system that, as we've heard John in the past come to this, has talked about the explosive growth. Well, that's another example of where when we have infrastructure that supports broadband and technology, that you have great opportunity for growth. A part of our use of technology has been to be able to deliver business knowledge resources across a large geographic area. We're now actually working in 78 counties. And so technology has always been a really important piece of what we're able to do, because we have 78 counties, but I think we have 18 employees. So it's not a lot. And the ability to be able to do applications online, to be able to build referral networks, all are part of what help us to be able to produce about 100 loans a year. So, so on the one side, we've been adapting the technology to be able to make small loans, those under 50,000, and starting to use some credit scoring. So if a liquid FICO score comes out above 150, we're now doing an all assets filing, and we could, in effect, close a loan in 5 days. So we're adapting our use of technology to be able to do that. Now, why? We used to take Airedales for collateral. I mean, dogs, right? Are we ever going to go take someone's dog? Probably not. But so in some ways, we've had to overcome our own pretenses about what we'd be willing to do and what we wouldn't be able to do in order to help support our gain in efficiency. So the small loans and trying to get to a point where we can do those loans well has been an important dimension. So this is our portal, and so I think we created this in 2013, and obviously we were convinced that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, because we had so many resources in this portal. We started off with 70 articles that were organized in money, marketing, and management, that were then sub-organized in social media, e-commerce, how to build a website, how to look at cash flows, it was grand. And so we started offering it to customers, and what happened? Well, no one used it. It wasn't no one. We used it a lot, but it was part of trying to understand that just because you build it doesn't necessarily mean that they will come in this particular instance. But what we have learned is that we created enormous value in this property that now has over 100 resources, 21 videos that we've created that feature a number of local businesses introducing topics around taxes, insurance, banking services, marketing strategy, e-commerce, 21 videos that cover a broad range of topics, and 6 financial calculators so that we can help people set a sales target for the year and to look at their sales goal and understand in their sales goal what products are they going to have to make in order to hit their sales goal, and then a markup to margin calculator that helps them to be able to make sure that when they sell the products that they're in fact making a profit. And then we have a cash flow calculator because, for God's sake, we're in Michigan and everybody faces seasonal challenges in Michigan. So we have all these tools and resources which we built in 2013, and they were great then, but they're better now. And they're better now because we've adapted our approach to blended learning. So 2 things have changed in terms of how we're now using the portal. The first was that we wanted to be able to understand and coach you toward your goal. So we now start in our underwriting in trying to make sure that we understand what the customer's goal is for going into business or in seeing our loan. So you can coach toward a goal as opposed to coaching toward 120 resources. But you can coach toward a goal. So that's number one. Second is that we started an approach of blended learning. So, for example, Beth Milner Jewelry, which was a customer that we did with River Valley a few years ago. If you see Beth Milner Jewelry between the end of October and Christmas, what you see is a UPS truck there every day. So what we might have a customer come to us and say, why is Beth selling so much that has UPS trucks there every day? So now how we can use the portal is we can say to a customer, well, watch this video and read these 3 articles, and then let's talk on Tuesday. So what the portal is doing for us is helping us to be able to work with customers toward an end of helping them gain terms and definitions so that when our coaching activities are happening, we're working on strategies and tactics. So this is another example of where broadband and the availability of that infrastructure helps us to be able to reach more and more of our customers. At one point, we were reaching about 40% of our customers, and last year I think our coaches were able to reach 80% of our customers. And furthermore, now this thing is like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And we've been able to sell the portal and licensing for the portal to groups in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and we think next there'll be Colorado and California. So it's, again, anybody can at some point recreate this. But if what we can do is to learn to share the knowledge that goes with it and the practice of blended learning, then that's a two-way street for us. One is helping our coaches to get smarter and understand better practices. And second, now the knowledge, not the skin, is helping us all to advance our ability to be able to work with customers in a better way. So we're now, I think, about 22 million in assets and something in that range, and about 11 million in net assets. Net assets is our equivalent of net worth. And if we were a bank, we'd be able to leverage our net assets about 10 times. We're not a bank. So in our field, we can leverage ourselves about 3 times. So that means that Northern Initiatives has, with what it has today, the potential to grow to about a $35 million fund, which is where we're trying to position ourselves to be able to grow. And of course, that happens with lots of different supports in lots of different ways and access to capital. About 70% of our loans have happened through USDA products to date. There are some long-term loan funds that you're able to revolve over 30 years. So that's been instrumental. And now, more recently, SBA products are taking up more of what we do, and also private support. So the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, in connection with Huntington National Bank, has a product that allows us to borrow at 3%. So we're then able to relend the 3% money in order to be able to continue to offer loans across a wide spectrum. So the future. There are a few things that we hold in common in the UP. The first challenge is demographics. If you look at the number of people in working age, we're not that much different than Grand Rapids, in Grand Rapids area. It's about 65% of our population is working age. The challenge is on the cusps. In the UP, the cusp is slanted toward aging. In Grand Rapids, it's slanted toward young people. And that reality is not unique to the Upper Peninsula. Every rural community is now facing the same challenge. So the challenge for us is, how do we get younger? And I would submit that getting younger is, how do you make your communities attractive, have a vibe, have these unique kinds of things that appeal in support of what's local, fresh, natural, and authentic. Second thing is talent. We all face the challenges of making sure that we can get a pipeline of qualified people to fill the jobs that we're a part of. Now, the opportunities. There's some things that I think really bode well for our communities. On the west end, Copper Peak, Bob Jackwart and others are trying to bring the ski flying hill back. Bob has already arranged to have a FIS sanctioned international event that would happen in a couple of years as we get this $15 million refurbishment done. And as Bob will tell you, that particular ski jumping hill opens up the opportunities for much additional training, because our ski jumpers train in Salt Lake City, which in the summer has challenges of altitude and heat that undermine your ability to simulate conditions. Copper Peak would not have that situation. So it does open up more possibilities for collaboration with Northern Michigan University, and the effect of having people consistently come to Copper Peak could be huge. Second, that continues to be out there on the east end is the Sioux Locks. And at some point, that must happen. We all know that, and the impacts for the community are going to be huge. And locally, we have a hospital that's about to launch this year, among other projects, and you can already see the effects starting to happen on Washington Street. So there are a number of planned investments all across the UP, and many that I don't know of, that really give us a sense that our future is actually pretty good. The second is that what we noticed when we moved here 20 years ago was there are just so many leaders in the UP. I don't know how much we appreciate the diversity of leadership that create so many activities and so many events. I mean, here tomorrow we have the UP 200 going on, and in Munising there's the Ice Festival. We were struck, as Sir Edmund Burke once said, what makes democracy happen are all the little platoons. And we're ripe with little platoons across the UP where people take an idea, get their friends together, and suddenly there's another event. I mean, we're not at a loss for things to do here. And it's all because there's such great leadership in so many places where people can find themselves in ways to be engaged. And that is certainly a strength that's saleable to other places. Third issue is the ubiquity of broadband. If we can pull that off, and Northern Michigan University is engaged in that, along with private partners, the ability for this place to be lit across is, it used to be so quaint to be able to say, oh, come to the UP and you'll lose cell service for a while. It's not quaint anymore. It's hugely disrupting. And so the ability to be able to get ubiquity in broadband gives us such a huge advantage against other rural communities. And the fourth thing is that I think as we've been able to attract more people to come here, as you see in John Madigan's tour, annual Picture Rocks tour statistics, more people get engaged with this place in different ways. We have a neighbor who, the flip on the talent side, by the way, is that more large corporations are also now thinking that they can have their employees live where their employees want. So, we decry the lack of talent, but large corporations are facing that same problem too. So one of our recent neighbors who moved in, her company in Chicago allows her to live in the Upper Peninsula and do her work. Tom Veer, who we all know, came from Chicago because there was broadband here. So he could be a trader working out of a Chicago business in Marquette. So, and even our son has been offered for all the employees in the business where he works, that if they want to live someplace else, that's an option for them. So the other side is, as talent has more choices to be where it wants to be, how do we pursue being as attractive as we possibly can with more diversity and more opportunity for people to be able to enjoy such a special place? So in summary, let me quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. "For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. You can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be." Drawing inspiration from that, we can see a world where what's important for all of us is to being open to learning and always willing to fail better. Thank you.
Dennis, you obviously covered a lot of ground and have answered all of the questions that people came in this morning. If that's not the case, coffee is off to the left. We'll try to energize the group.
Okay.
Well, if not, thank you, Dennis.
Okay, thank you.
Before you step off,
Oh, yeah.
we have a couple of items here for you. We very much appreciate the insight and the information you've shared, so thank you very much.